are totally unjustifiable because they already took his gun away. But the second 5 shots after the pause is nothing but murder and execution, without a shadow of a doubt. For all the independents who voted for Trump, and even for the right wing who voted for Trump, you see that his team is a bunch of liars. That guy was not a domestic terrorist. He was a guy who treated veterans.
I'm sorry, but this Second Amendment circus has officially hit peak hypocrisy, because the moment the gun narrative doesn't flatter the MAGA crowd, suddenly it's irresponsible and dangerous. Funny how that works. Today we're watching Cenk Uygur rip that lie clean in half, while the usual right-wing defenders squirm, deflect, and storm off. If you love explosive content like this and want to see more, click that subscribe button.
Utterly extraordinary hypocrisy of people who've spent the last 20 years telling me that absolutely an American has a Second Amendment right to take a gun legally to a protest or anywhere they see fit. But now, because it doesn't suit the narrative, suddenly this is a terrible thing to be doing. I don't remember that argument with Kyle Rittenhouse. So to me, as always with these things, I don't take a side, but I do look at hypocrisy when I see it and call it out when I see it. And I'm seeing a bucket load of hypocrisy.
And here's where it gets deliciously messy, because Piers Morgan, yes, Piers, ends up saying the quiet part out loud. He's basically looking at the pro-gun crowd and going, hang on, you lot spent years insisting an American can legally take a gun to a protest, anywhere they fancy, and now you're suddenly horrified. And I'm sat there thinking, exactly. This is the entire game. The Second Amendment isn't a principle to them. It's a prop, a costume. They wear it when it intimidates the left, and they bin it the second it makes their side look reckless. And, sorry, don't tell me you care about context now. Where was that sermon during Kyle Rittenhouse? Back then it was all self-defense, hero, freedom. Now it's why would anyone bring a gun? Oh, do shut up. Tell me in the comments, when did consistency become optional?
From the side, and the third shot killed her. Now you go to Alex Preddy, and they called him a domestic terrorist and an assassin who went there to murder law enforcement. Now, guys, look, number one, you can see that's clearly not the case. They're clearly telling them, who cares? Just shoot away. And in the case of Alex Preddy, there's the first 5 shots, which, again, are totally unjustifiable because they already took his gun away. But the second 5 shots after the pause is nothing but murder and execution. But not only are they killing people in the streets in an effort to divide America and get us to hate each other, but on top of that, now you see, without a shadow of a doubt, for all the independents who voted for Trump, and even for the right wing who voted for Trump, you see that his team is a bunch of liars. That guy was not a domestic terrorist. He was a guy who treated veterans, and his last words were, trying to protect that poor woman over there. And that was his last effort. And to call him an assassin, there is no question that they are giant liars. And they're trying to get us to hate each other, and don't buy into it. And yes, finally, the last irony is, when we were using our First Amendment rights on the left, a lot of the right wing said, well, free speech, we didn't quite mean it. Now, and by the way, when I say that, I mean the extreme right. Most of Trump voters are abandoning him on this issue as well. And now they say, well, now that it involves the Second Amendment rights, maybe we'll pay attention. Ironically, if he wasn't armed, I think he would get less right-wing support. And that is a deep irony. But I'll take it, because right now it's become obvious to the whole country they're taking away our First Amendment rights, our Second Amendment rights, and they're trying to set up a police state. And a police state isn't going to care if you're left or right.
And here's where it gets even grimier, because once they can't win the principle, they go for the smear. They start chucking labels like confetti, domestic terrorist, assassin. And I'm sat here thinking, hold on, since when did guy at a protest automatically equal enemy of the state? And before someone screams, but safety, yes, safety matters, which is precisely why you don't invent villains to justify brutality. Cenk's point is painfully simple. This Alex Preddy narrative is supposedly built to make people panic first and think never. You watch the footage, you listen to the claims, and it just doesn't match. But that's the trick, isn't it? If you can convince your audience that the other side is a monster, then anything becomes necessary. And it doesn't just poison one case, it rots the whole country. Divide, inflame, repeat. That's the playbook.
Look, I think we're going to figure out more details on this. It looks to me like maybe his weapon discharged, that is the weapon that they took from him, discharged, and then there was a panic and a thought that a gunshot had been fired and the reaction occurred. That's my analysis of it right now. I think there should be an investigation. If it's determined that he behaved in a way that was outside the law, then this individual should be charged. And again, I think the real issue here, big picture, again, is how do you get the 10 million that Biden let out? But also, these individuals are going and intentionally obstructing these ICE agents from being able to do their jobs. And this, I believe, is the intent. They want a violent act, whether it's Renee Good, whether it's this individual.
But Clay, before I move to the other two panelists, again, I am struck by an irony here, because Renee Good wasn't armed, and it didn't save her, right? And the bottom line is, I thought the position on the conservative right, which is mainly supportive of the NRA, for example, is that actually the answer, say, to school shootings is that everyone should have guns at schools, right, to stop this happening. That would stop it happening. If you take that logic, then after 2 shootings, 2 people being shot dead by ICE agents, wouldn't the logical thing be to do to take a gun, if you're legally allowed to have one, to protect yourself against the same thing happening to you? In other words, is the argument not being put forward here by people on the right who love guns? I'm not going to get into that debate again. Litigated that years ago. We've moved on. It's your country, your debate, your guns. However, it does seem hypocritical to me. It's like this is the completely opposite advice that you would normally give to a situation which keeps recurring where people are being shot. The normal advice is you should, if you're allowed to carry a gun, take it to defend yourself.
And speaking of the playbook, watch how fast the goalposts grow legs and sprint out the studio. Piers is laying out the obvious irony. If your answer to every shooting is more guns, then hang on, why isn't that the answer when it's your preferred agents doing the shooting? Because suddenly it's irresponsible. Suddenly it's escalation. Suddenly it's, what were they thinking bringing a firearm? Oh, do me a favour. And then Clay does the classic move. He can't defend the actual moment on the tape, so he starts rummaging around for a completely different panic button. Border. 10 million. ICE. Just doing their jobs. And I'm sat here thinking, we were discussing whether people got shot because of a twitchy, chaotic situation, and you've pivoted to a campaign leaflet. Accountability is always later, conveniently later, always later.
Well, first of all, a fabulous Republican economist, I think his name was Herb Syme, said that which can't continue won't. This is not going to continue. By the way, if I were a Republican, I would be reminded of the sign on the entrance of Dante's Inferno, abandon all hope. You're going to get beat so bad in November, you have no idea. The Democrats are going to pick up 6 or 7 Senate seats. And the idea that somebody exercising poor judgment, which I'm sure I do 10 times a day, is the excuse of someone to shoot me is utterly ludicrous. So people make mistakes all the time. They park in no parking zones, they exceed speed limits, they might drink too much. None of this suggests that you ought to be out shooting people. And honestly, what you have there is a bunch of undertrained, not particularly qualified people with badges and guns. And this is going to be the result of it. The American people don't like it overwhelmingly. Stand by, sit still, and get the crap beat out of you, because that's what's going on.
And then, sorry, once you've watched that border pivot in real time, you can't unsee the pattern. Because when the gun argument collapses, when the good guy with a gun fairy tale hits the brick wall of reality, they don't reassess. They just change the subject. And speaking of changing the subject, let's talk about the other sacred costume they throw on whenever it's convenient. Patriotism. The same crowd that wraps itself in the flag suddenly goes very quiet when Trump's record on military service gets mentioned. Bone spurs, skipping remembrance events, reportedly calling fallen soldiers losers and suckers. And yes, Carville's right to drag that into the light, because you don't get to cosplay as pro-troops while excusing that. This is the tell. The whole thing's built on vibes, not values. When accountability shows up, they storm off or they shout over it. Which is it today?
Enough stuff at the wall, you go extreme, you go hard, and then you rein back and get what you may have wanted in the first place.
Well, first of all, his statements about the UK soldiers is completely consistent with his entire life. He is the single most anti-military president we've ever had in the United States. Let's review the facts. The bone spurs? Oh, really? What about at Bella Wood, that he refused to leave Paris and go honor maybe one of the 5 greatest battles in history. You can't go on a Marine Corps base that there's not a Bellawood Avenue. Then he tells General Kelly, and yes, he told General Kelly, that American military people were suckers for serving their country like this.
You're going to keep bringing up these old points that aren't true. This is disingenuous. You're not being honest right now.
Excuse me for speaking while you're interrupting. Okay,
Well,
then he
tell the
tells,
truth, and I won't.
again, excuse me I apologize for speaking. I admire your service, but your manners don't come to snuff here. He told John McCain publicly he didn't like people who were captured, was shot down, was a POW, was a pilot in the Navy. Yes, he told General Kelly the people were suckers. Jeffrey Goldberg reported it, and they tried time and time again to have General Kelly say he did, said he never did. This is the most consistently anti-military president the United States has ever had.